Right? Check, check, check. Check one, two, one, two. Picking up general noise. It's not. It's not picking this up. No, sir. Anything now? Anything now? Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank everybody for taking out today. Let's open up our presentation today with prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise to Allah, the Lord of all the world, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment, in which we now live. He alone we serve, and I am able to seek. Will Allah guide us on the right path, the path of those on whom thou hast bestowed favor, and not the path of those on whom your wrath is brought down, and on those who go astray after they have heard thy teaching. Ameen. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah. He came to us in the person of Master Muhammad. We thank him for his coming and raising up the most honorable life of Muhammad, his message now, of Christ, and both believing with us our beloved leader, teacher, guide, the honorable minister, who tried times in the name to greet everybody this afternoon. The greeting words of peace and paradise. Assalamu alaikum. Good to see everybody out this afternoon for a very special time where we take a moment, as we have been the past 7 months, have a presentation from one of our ministers. Today's presentation is going to be from the Ministry of Health. But I just want to say as we get ready to hear what our beloved sister has to share with us, is that the minister was guided to set up the 9 ministries, that the nation may broaden its scope, that we may understand that the work of building a nation, of course, starts with the word, it starts with a spiritual output, but must go beyond into all of the areas of human endeavor. So we have a ministry of business, a ministry of trade and commerce. We have a ministry of education, science and technology, defense, justice, everything that comes with running a nation. But of course, if we don't have our health intact, then it's hard to have anything else intact. That's right. Because as our Secretary of Health, Mr. Kennedy said that I heard him say once, said that a healthy person has 1,000 dreams, but a sick person only has one, and that is to be well. Because at the end of the day, someone is really not well. The only thing you can think of is I would like to feel better. So what we receive from the Ministry of Health is paramount, but all of the ministries are very critical. But I must say that when we receive what we receive from our great biochemists, that we should really try our best to implement what is being given to us. We must try to act on it so that we can be in optimal health and wellness and wholeness. Allah desires for us to be well spiritually and mentally, but also physically, which is why He gave us how to eat and to live. So we are blessed to be able to have a sister who verifies really what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, that after he was done teaching, there would be scientists who would come and verify what he has taught. So we have the fulfillment of that right in our midst. Let's give her a hand as she comes forward. Sister Dr. Christina X. Wow, wow, wow.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, who came 9,000 miles from the person of Master Prophet Muhammad to seek and save the lost, and who imparted this information on how to live, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, I again greet you in the words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. So I made this presentation specifically for us, for you, because there's so much guidance in how they need to live, and so much that I think is being missed. And so I am actually going to start with how to optimize your 3-day fast. And I decided to put that at the beginning because once I get going on other material, it'll be a while. This was supposed to be last weekend, and so I wanted to give some guidance on that. But I think this is something that you will find hopefully extremely informative and helpful for you. Do I have a clicker? Or do I just say next slide? Okay, so there are key drivers of a discomfort when you are in fast. Sometimes we have a great fast, sometimes we don't. And so I want to help people understand if they are having a little bit of a struggle during the fast, what issues might be at play so that they can address those issues. And, I often feel great during the fast. And if our body is optimized, that's what we should feel. If we're not feeling like that, then we may feeling because parts of our body, and if that's confused, so you want to come to me, and that could be a whole nother another lecture. But really, a lot of times we should feel very good during the fast, but there are some things that I think we need to keep in mind. So one of the drivers of not feeling well, and usually there's a time like Friday night or maybe Saturday morning when you're feeling a little off, as your body switches. So many people don't know when you eat carbohydrates, your body stores 24 to 48 hours worth of fuel as something called glycogen in your liver. Okay? And so if anyone's been an athlete, they know sometimes before, like if you're a runner or something, you carb load so that you have enough energy to get through your marathon or whatever it is, right? So one of the things that we want to do is on that Thursday meal, get enough carbs. And one of the carbs that may be really helpful prior to fasting is potato. So it's an excellent carb to store that energy. You can add it to your bean soup because on a 3-day fast, it's okay to get a little bit more carbs than normal, right? You really don't want to be starting your 3-day fast short of carbohydrates. Right? That's just not really, going to give you what you need. And potatoes also have a lot of potassium, and that can be really, really helpful in setting yourself up so that you have the electrolytes that you need. Okay? So it's usually like that Friday night, Saturday morning time when you're going to be depleting your glycogen reserves and you're going to be feeling a little off. And that is normal. It's a transition from burning carbohydrates or sugars that are in your liver to actually starting to burn fat. All right? And so usually we just kind of navigate that, give ourselves a little bit more grace. One of the biggest things that happens, and I'm going to go into this a little bit more, is sodium depletion. So if you feel weak, cold, heavy, have a headache, or dizzy during the fast, you may just be lacking salt. Something as easy as putting a pinch of salt in some water and sipping it slowly, mix it in obviously, could really make a huge difference. So your insulin is something that tells your food, your carbohydrates to go into your cells. Well, that drops when you're fasting. You're not eating it. It's actually activated by eating. And so as insulin drops, you actually, your kidneys excrete more sodium and you lose more fluid. So you may actually start getting a little dehydrated and you may need some salt. So, and mom may also need some potassium and magnesium. So we're going to talk specifically about that. One of the third key drivers of fasting discomfort is peaking cortisol. This is much more an issue in women. And so I think sometimes we think everybody's like us. So the man's like, I'm fine. Why aren't you fine? The woman's like, I'm going to fast up. Men have a higher tolerance for cortisol. They are made that. They are made to go chop down the tree, run the 26 miles to go get the doctor, start, going to labor, or whatever it is, right? They are made to be able to handle physiological stress as cortisol much better. They can peak a really high cortisol. They can go do an insanity workout, come home after the fast and be fine. And then like you lifted a couple of weights and you're like, oh, I don't feel so good. Like, what's wrong with you? You're a woman. All right. One, women peak cortisol in response to relational stress. The fact that you just talk to me funny. Not you. It's peak your cortisol. You're like, I'm doing my best. Okay. So as women, we can only tolerate a much smaller cortisol peak. So if we try to go out and do an intense workout while we're fasting, sometimes we might do that on Friday thinking, oh, it's the first day I'm good. well, that might be okay on Friday, but then we may not start feeling well further on. Because we'll deplete our glycogen, we'll use that energy that our liver had, and then we may actually start becoming depleted of electrolytes. Sometimes to fix that, all you need is a little bit of salt. But as women, if we have other stressors, you have children in the home, just, as women, we're trying to balance it all of those physiological and for women, emotional and relational stress is physiological stress, can actually put us into a place of too much cortisol. And that's going to feel like jittery, anxiety, can't sleep up at night. So if you don't sleep well during your fast, then this is something you may want to consider. And it can be for men too, especially if they're trying to continue their workout during fast. Right, so I'm going to get into a little bit more specifics now. So one, sodium depletion. I didn't know this. You lose sodium and you lose water during fast. And so a lot of times all you need to do is, they recommend 2 to 2.5 teaspoons of salt total daily. So, but I mean, if you're feeling a little low, take maybe at least a teaspoon of salt. You don't want to get too much, too salty. Put it in a glass of water, mix it up, and just sit and sip it. Not that deep. And I found it can really just perk you up. So you can just put some mineral salt in water, and you can use just table salt, but you can also use like a Himalayan salt or something. Salt, whatever you want. You can get an electrolyte packet, and the benefit of that is it may have the potassium and the other ones in it as well. If you feel that you need it, you can do broth. That's not going to have a huge impact on your fats in terms of negative, right? Because there's not really a lot of carbohydrates in broth. So broth is a good option, and make sure it is salted if you're really struggling with fats or whatever. And you can put a little salt and some herbal tea. Okay, so it's going to support your fluid balance, your blood volume. I have really low blood pressure, so sometimes I was taking a warm bath, and sometimes I feel a little cold during my fast. And that would actually expand your blood vessels, and it actually makes it so that, like, my blood pressure would even drop even more because it expanded my blood vessels. And I feel like I was going to pass out to take me back. I'd have to sit down for like an hour, and I'm like, what did I just do? Right? And it's because of the fast, you've lost some fluid, and so your fluid balance is a little bit off. And so having a little, maybe I just don't need to take a bath fasting, maybe I just need a little sodium. And so these are things just for each of us to tweak. And so obviously, sodium is important for your nerve, for your muscle. And if anyone is prone to seizure, your sodium potassium balance, especially potassium, is really, really important. And so making sure for people who are sensitive to that is maintained is good. All right, so sodium is the most important one, but potassium and magnesium are right after it. So if you have muscle cramping, twitching, palpitation, that can be probably potassium first and then maybe even magnesium. So if you also feel wired or have poor sleep or tense muscles, taking a little bit of something with potassium before bed can actually help those muscles relax. All right, both of these are going to give them the sodium, the potassium, and the magnesium. All three of these are going to reduce your physiological stress and make it more likely that you're going to sleep well. Okay. So potassium is really important for allowing your muscles to relax after they get infected. Okay, and for nerve signaling and for heart rate. So we're not asking you to take a whole bunch. You can do an electrolyte mix. It's probably going to have what you need in it. I would say, you don't need more than 200 to 300 milligrams. You probably don't need that much. If these tense muscles at night are really a problem for you, even drinking a little coconut water. It has a little bit of glucose. I don't think it has so much that it's, contraindicated during your fast, but just enough with the potassium to help those muscles relax. And what it's also doing is lowering that cortisol response. Just that little bit of glucose in there tells your body you're safe, you can relax, and it lowers your cortisol. All right. So magnesium, if you ever have like your eye twitching or you feel heart palpitations, a lot of times that's a magnesium deficiency. And so we recommend magnesium glycinate. Magnesium is needed for over 200 to 300 reactions in the body. So it almost never hurts to supplement with a little bit of magnesium. So magnesium glycinate is a great form because glycinate helps calm, helps you sleep. And that is an amino acid that's with that magnesium. If you have constipation, a little magnesium citrate. generally. Oh, I'm sorry. So I have the thing. All right. So I'm so sorry. I'll leave you guys to. I'm like talking. I'll let you if you want to take pictures of that or. Okay, moving on, I'm so sorry. So your cortisol rise, this is called sympathetic activation, especially if you're up at night, you're wired, and you can't sleep during the fast. Again, this is more likely in women, but the body, the fasting naturally shifts the body into a fuel mobilized any stored carbohydrates out of your liver, and you're increasing cortisol. Your body is meant to like, if you don't have food, it doesn't go, oh, just go to bed. No, you might have to go do something to stay alive. So your body is activating all those pathways, which during the day you can actually sometimes get up like you're clear, you have ketones, you be really functional. Sometimes at night that cortisol will keep you up at night, okay? So, but cortisol is helping you release any sort of glucose, mobilizing fat, maintaining blood pressure, increasing alertness. So a mild rise can be beneficial, but if it's too high, you need to look at what you're doing during your fasting. Are you doing too much exercise? Are you having too many stressors? Or did you have too much caffeine? Okay. So if you are peaking cortisol, jittery, anxiety, feeling cold, heart racing, waking up at night, wired, tired, again, higher risk in women, individuals under chronic stress, if you, especially if you just had an illness like a virus, if you're excessively lean, and if you're, either have poor sleep or you're training, you're exercising. You might, some things that all of us can consider a lower caffeinated tea instead of coffee. If it, like, you can almost feel it when your cortisol gets too high, you're like, oh, that's too much, right? You want to be awake, especially on that last Sunday, but you don't want too much. So obviously adding cream or butter or ghee to your coffee or your tea is going to give you those ketones that are going to help fuel your brain, fuel your clarity, and actually it's going to take the edge off that caffeine-induced cortisol. Now, actually, one of the reasons I believe that we have our tea or our coffee with a little cream and a little sugar in the morning is it actually blunts that cortisol. Your cortisol goes up in the morning. If you are fasting and you have nothing, your body actually kicks into high gear and it says, hey, we haven't got any food, kick up that adrenaline, kick up that cortisol, even more than it normally would. Having a little bit of tea with some sugar and butter or cream actually reduces that cortisol. And it kind of brings you into a nice area, unless you get the super caffeinated, or you have that second cup of coffee or tea, where it really is too much. And as a woman, I can feel when it's too much cortisol. I'm like, oh, too much. Okay. So we really, as believers, should not be having a second cup of tea or coffee in the morning. The point of that is just to give us that little bit of glucose that actually takes the edge of the cortisol, gives us that brain fuel, gets our body going without it feeling like it's in survival. All right? If you continue to have too much caffeine, you are going to have high cortisol, which is going to be overall the long-term benefit. All right? And then you'll be a little bit addicted to it. So really, it's just that one cup with a little bit of sugar, a little bit of butter, not like a Starbucks, Marco, cafe, like whatever. All right. And many people don't realize when I had first had my divorce and I moved and I was during COVID, like, and I was speaking nationwide and it was a lot of change. And I was really stressed, not like consciously so, but I could feel my body was stressed by all of the changes. And I thought, well, I need to get into the gym and work out, but I just didn't feel it, right? What I felt like doing was walking. And that was intuitive because walking actually lowers cortisol. So when you need to clear your head because you about to slap somebody, walking lowers your cortisol. So whether it's physiological stress or emotional stress, really they're the same thing. Walking actually is one of the best exercises. It also encourages fat utilization. It actually, one of the reasons we fast is to signal our mitochondria, which produce our energy to rejuvenate themselves, is to really activate rejuvenation, system one. And walking provides a mild hormetic stress that keeps that process going while lowering our cortisol and increasing our fat utilization. So a nice, slow, gentle walk is actually really, really good. And it also moves all our limbs and gets everything moving. And it also helps our bowel motility, which can slow down during a fast. So a gentle walk is actually probably the best exercise during a fast. And I'll let you, for each one, it's going to be individual, how much exercise that you can tolerate during a fast. Okay. For breaking your fast, bone broth is great. And I forgot what brand it is, but at Meyer, there's in the refrigerated section next to me, there's actually a bone broth that congeals, it's like gel, and it's refrigerated. And so then, you maybe warm some warm water over it and dump it out and you have to get it up. So bone broth has so it's a true bone broth, has a lot of benefits for fasting. It helps to replenish electrolytes and it starts hydration. It helps your nervous system in recovery, and it has the amino acid, it has the small protein fragments that really support the recovery process and give your body what it needs. So very easy to absorb. In the past, people always had soup or bone broth when they were ill or recovering because it provides just the nutrients and the healing. And it also helps to heal your digestive tract and restore it. And so you're putting healing into your digestive tract, after fast. That's exactly when it needs it, right? It's open to that. You don't have a bunch of food in it. So that is great. Okay, so I just want to summarize all of these fast supports that hopefully were helpful, and I'm going to take up any questions on this before I move on. So add some more carbohydrates to that Thursday meal, and it's great if they are high potassium foods. Potatoes and bananas are great, and especially great for our young people. One of the things I don't think we eat enough potatoes in the nation. Like they're not for people who have diabetes or have blood sugar issues or are critically overweight. But they're a really nutritious food. They're low cost, especially for growing children. They have potassium. They're really nutrient rich. So I think if you have large families growing and eating potatoes, add a little bit of salt to your water and drink it periodically through the day to stabilize your blood volume and just your electrolyte. Make sure you're warm enough. It's going to be an additional stressor if you're letting yourself, shiver through the day. I don't know, sometimes just we sit there and work on something and shiver instead of going in. Yeah. All right, monitor and address your cortisol. So this is going to be really individual. That's why I went through it in such detail. Consider potassium. Coconut water is an easy option that's widely available. And or magnesium glycinate at night to help with muscle relaxation and sleep effects. Limit your coffee and tea to 1 cup so you don't get too much caffeine. You might consider a lower caffeine option. And then go ahead and put a little bit of that sugar or honey or whatever and fat, which is the cream or butter. Consider bone broth to break your fat. And there's one other thing I want to talk about that I meant to put a slide in here for, and I didn't. If you are experiencing pain during your fast or it feels like inflammation, you may have your omega-3 ratio up. So remember, omega-3s are the fats, and there's some of the fats that have the most direct correlation to intelligence. So mothers who eat omega-3s while they're pregnant actually have smarter children, and that intelligence lasts throughout the lifetime. This is building this neural pathway. So, but what many people don't realize is the seed oils have omega-6s. We want the right balance, but because we have so many seed oils in like our chips and in everything, we're just exposed to way more than any time ever in history because, of industrialization. So most of us have way too many omega-6s. When you fast, those omega-6s create an inflammatory cascade. So these are fats that are part of our cell membrane that signal. But omega-3 signal too. And almost all of the signaling from omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. with our fish oil from fish, but even if we're eating fish, most of us aren't eating enough. So this is one of those things that, I'm not a huge supplementation person, but I feel like supplementing with omega-3 has so many benefits, and it's really, most of the time, it's just fish oil, good quality. And so, having that good balance of omega-3 is actually going to give you anti-inflammatory signaling during the fast. So if you're feeling inflammatory, feeling pain, that is probably signaling an imbalance. Okay, great. I'll take any questions really quick on this before I move on. Yes, ma'am.
So my question was on the potato, because of course, hopefully the black people, and we know that we're not supposed to be the white people, that's pretty much so it's red and yellow potato that is there a better way to prepare them? And I don't know that
We don't have any guidance on that because it's not clear. Coconut water is something that is used with an electrolyte. It's very accessible right now. It's very high capacity. So it's, it's an easy thing to do, but I don't have guidance on. I've never heard of it being an issue by a chemist. Now, as far as the guidance. It is. Right. Yeah, yeah. Yes. So I think on a daily basis, prior to a fast, I think it's pretty good for all of us to have enough carbs. Okay, you're talking about us being fast. So you are going to go into the genesis of the creating fat. So I'm very doubtful that's not going to blood sugar, potatoes, right? On a daily basis is when you want to stay away from the potatoes and eat the more complex carbohydrates, which for us is bean soup. Okay? And so that bean soup is going to give you a much more level blood sugar. Most of us, I know for me, I just need to avoid the sweets, right? Things like white bread and, those are going to be the things that are going to actually contribute way more to your blood sugar. So if you eliminate some of the bread in your diet, if you had high blood sugar, I would say don't eat potatoes, but you can eat them on a Thursday before that. I think it's just up to you. And for women, it really is going to depend on where they are in the hormonal cycle. If their estrogen is high, they're probably going to go for that walk and feel just fine. If they're in a different phase in their cycle, they might go for a 20-minute walk and they're like, I have to sit down. So it's really going to be person to person, get to know your body. Like if you do a 10-mile walk, I usually typically go on a 3 mile, but it's nice and slow. I might be a little bit tired, but it's not. So it's really going to depend on each person's health, their level of fitness, and how their body adapts to that. Okay, so, and I want to make it very clear why I am, as far as I know, following guidance as closely as I can. I'm also bringing the biochemistry in, and there are points where there's this little bit of gray area. And I do believe that we're taught that we are going to learn more, and we're going to get more guidance. And so, I'm going to bring the biochemistry, and I think we're going to have to sit with some of those gray areas for a while and ask for divine guidance, and also where there is a gray area, I'm going with the best biochemistry. Okay? Sometimes the biochemistry is clear which side it goes on, right? And gray areas, and other times, okay. So getting back to how to eat to live, we eat meat, but meat was never intended for man to eat from the very creation of man. How to Eat to Live, Volume 2, page 135. The famous meats that the black man eats are beef and lamb. Before the making of the white man, the black man did not eat animal flesh. After the removal of the white man, there will be no more eating of this type of meat, animal flesh, or even fowl. There will be a complete stoppage and practice of the eating of lamb flesh, regardless of whether it is animal, beast, or fowl. The people will live 1,000 years without eating it. How to Eat to Live, Volume 2, page 134. So it's very clear where we're going, where we're headed, right? And I think all of us, I mean, most people, like, I like a good steak, but like most of us don't really like eating our you know, like, so that there's ethical considerations, and we're told we weren't designed to eat meat. However, over generations and thousands of years, our bodies have adapted to meat. Our gene expression has adapted to meat. And we are at a time like no other where we are inundated with toxins. And one of the most critical factors is that our microbiome, which helps to digest and to absorb our food, is in a compromised state, unlike any that is ever. Okay? So I know that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad went to prison, and he didn't say stay with one meal a day. He said, under these circumstances, we need to make adjustments. All right? So I'm coming from that perspective, and from this perspective, we must learn to eat vegetables and fruits and stay away from lamb flesh. It is a little difficult for us to suddenly stop eating beef, lamb, and chicken, but we must wean away from such flesh gradually. How to Eat to Live, Volume 2, page 134. So one of the things that I want to say that many of us take this as maybe a willpower issue. Well, you can move away from it gradually. I have willpower to do it tomorrow. And you may, and some of us can move away from meat, and because of our particular physiology, our microbiome, our gene expression, it's not a problem for us. And for others of us, it is going to be a problem. It's going to depend on where our ancestors came from, what our epigenetic is, whether we're a woman, whether we're menstruating, whether we are bearing children. And those are putting a much more nutritional strain on our bodies. And so what I want to explain is like, I'm fully on board with moving away from it. But as a biochemist, I see problems. And I want to address those problems, and I want to do it forthrightly, because I do believe we need to wean away gradually. And one of the things that will happen is our gene expression will actually change with each following generation. But when you do it like from today until tomorrow, you're putting an incredible stress on the system that it may not be ready. Some people's systems, it won't be stressful, and they'll just flip and they'll be fine. Other people, it could really, like, their health could deteriorate. And for our children, it could make critical, deleterious impact on their development. Okay, one of the things I want to, okay, now let's do this. Okay, so why we must move away from meat wisely. So if I go back a couple of slides, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad differentiated between different meats very clearly. He said the famous meats that the black man eats are beef and lamb. There's a reason for that. He said we don't need to be eating chicken or fowl, although if you do need meat in your diet, just get the cleanest meat that you can. And he said that we can and should eat the squab, but not after it leaves the nest. So there is differentiation in much of what he says. We need to look carefully at that. And so first I'm going to look at the meats that it says that the black man does eat. Okay, we're going to see something we're not supposed to keep. All right. So why we must move away from meat wisely? Beef and lamb provide highly bioavailable nutrients. And I want to look at that word bioavailable. In terms of some of the nutrients that are provided, it is most available to the body in this meat. And those nutrients are ones that we actually studied today, necessary for energy production, a lot of your B vitamins, brain and nervous system function, oxygen transport, hormones and sexual development, muscle repair, immune function, and mineral balance. And most of them are either much more bioavailable, able to be absorbed from meat, or some of them aren't even really in very many plant products. Okay, now we're vegetarians, So there are other sources. So I'm going to take us through these one at a time. So many people remove meat without replacing the critical nutrients because they're not really sure what they are, right? So the question is not, do the plants contain the nutrients? It's, can the body utilize the nutrients that are in the plant? So today we were looking at a bunch of different plants and animal foods and the nutrients that they contain. But the most honorable Elijah Muhammad even said about the wheat germ, don't eat the wheat germ. It's too hard for you to digest. And I'm going to explain, it contains things that prevent your body from absorbing nutrients. He said, regardless, they can analyze it and say the wheat germ has all of these different nutrients in it. He said, regardless of all those nutrients, don't eat it. It's not good for you. And it is part of the seed of the wheat that has some of these problematic aspects that I'm going to go into and teach us how to wisely deal with these in our own food preparation so that we can move away from these. Okay, so here are some nutrients that I am most concerned about if someone tells me they're a vegetarian or a vegan. And they're vitamin B12, which is almost exclusively found in animal products. And this is critical for nerves, brain, energy, and red blood cells. Iron is obviously, this is what your red blood cells use to transport oxygen. And so if you are gestating a child or you are menstruating, iron is going to be critical for you, as women tend to lose this every month. Zinc. Zinc is so critical in vegan societies where they just don't have any meat. Some of the children don't even undergo sexual development. They don't undergo puberty at all if they have it. So, especially with these three, B12, iron, and zinc, a critical deficiency in these during pregnancy or early child development can change your child's development permanently. Okay? So it's not like, oh, well, we'll get it tomorrow. There's some things that you have to have at that critical period. So the impairment in development may be so small that you never notice, or it can be larger. Obviously, most of the time, we're not so critically deficient that our children don't reach maturity, puberty-wise. However, it could make them less fertile, and we would never know why, right? So this is why, if you're talking to me about your diet, I get this really weird look on my face. That's why. And it's because I'm like, I want to make sure you have what you need. Now, other things, a complete protein, we're going to talk about, creatine and some of these other things. You're probably going to get those because we do have some animal products in our diet, but they are something that are routinely reduced in vegetarian diet. Okay, and here's the crux of the issue. No matter what the analysis from the FDA says, bioavailability matters. Plant foods often say they're high in iron, zinc, protein, and B vitamins, but it's not available, all right? Especially if it's from seeds. So we need to be most concerned with our seeds. So this is things like wheat or corn or beans are a seed, lentils are a seed, chickpeas are a seed. All of those are seeds. Especially if it is a seed, those nutrients are bound up in a way that you cannot get to them. That's why that seed can remain in the soil for a year, for 2 years, for 50 years, and not sprout. What happens to make those available? It's soaked. It's soaked in water, and then it starts to sprout. As it starts to sprout, those different vitamins become available for the growing embryo, the growing plant embryo. Okay? So these seeds, in order to remain dormant, they have to keep these nutrients locked up. And so there's a certain kind of chemical, I guess you would call it, called phytic acid and lectins that help keep these bound up so that the seed just doesn't germinate wherever and it doesn't just mold or break down, right? And there's these enzymes inhibitors that prevent that seed from sprouting, and they keep those nutrients locked. So if you just eat the seed, whether it's a pumpkin seed, which is high in zinc, that zinc is probably not available, right? The seed has all the nutrients, but your body cannot access it. So these compounds reduce mineral absorption, protein digestion and absorption, and nutrient availability. Especially you see now a lot of like pea protein for bodybuilders. I'm going to tell you that pea protein is really hard to digest, really hard on your digestive system, and you're probably not getting any of that protein. Okay, now they've come out with fermented pea protein, right? Which is hopefully they fermented it right and it makes it bioavailable. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about in terms of moving away from meat. How do we make these bioavailable? So again, why wisely? Many people remove meat, but fail to replace these critical B vitamins, which are really necessary for energy and brain function and DNA function, and other bioavailable minerals. They don't have a complete amino acid balance. I've known some people that were vegan and lived on McDonald's fries. I know that's none of us. There are critical fat-soluble vitamins, digestive enzymes, and those key mineral supports, especially zinc and iron, right? So they become fatigued, mineral deficient, bloated, malnourished, and blood sugar is unstable. We are the criteria, right? We are the criteria that other people are watching to see if this word from God is real. And so it's really critical that we are following the guidance correctly and wisely so that we look as vital and as healthy and as energetic as this diet has the potential to make us. Okay? Okay, so to go again, the famous meats the black men eat are beef and lamb and the squab. So what do these have in common? So today in class, we really looked at B vitamins. And B vitamins come from fermentation. Why? Okay, I'm going to go ahead. In Leviticus in the Bible, it says, you may eat any animal that has a divided hoof and choose the cut. Leviticus 11:3. So why does it say this in the Bible that we're to eat these? It has two criteria, and one of them is to chew the cud. It is because these animals are fermenting fat, and fermenting is what makes B vitamins, especially B12. Which is one of the nutrients that is very hard to get outside of animal products, right? So when that cow or that sheep actually, or that frog, go back one. Why did he say, doesn't that seem random to anybody? The young pigeon called the squab. Like, where did that come from? And I thought, what in the world is that? I've never even heard of a squab. I guess it's about the size of a Cornish hen, and they actually used to grow big enough for you to eat. But why the squab? And he says, the squab is good to eat when it is young and has not yet flown the nest. But when the squab flies from its nest, do not eat him. So what's going on here? What is happening is the mother is eating, fermenting the food, and regurgitating it into the baby squab, which sounds very gross, but notice all the commonalities here. All of these animals are fermenting their food, and the B vitamins that they're producing are going into the meat, and in the case of cows and sheep, into the milk. Okay? So this is why black men eat beef and lamb. That doesn't mean we're always going to eat it, but that's why, right? So this is our starting point, and we have to understand these nuances in the guidance. Okay. Right, so even the squab is gonna have those B vitamins from the fermented. So if we're going to eat animals, we want to eat those that are the most nutrient rich, that are giving us what we need. And so here I provided some of the critical vitamins and nutrients that are provided in ruminant animals such as cows and goats and sheep. And critically, vitamin B12, riboflavin, niacin, B6, and zinc and iron. And other B vitamins as well. Now, many of these go into the milk as well, but typically your meat is going to be your highest source. And the reason I say that is because if someone is ill or they're not getting enough nutrients, You know, if you would take someone to the hospital and give them an IV, well, you know, they should give them we can give them some powers too, right? So, there are times when we want to make sure we're getting these critical nutrients, and, beef and lamb are going to be the most bioavailable when we're sure this is really what our system needs. And, you know, either a timing issue, we need it now, or, you know, we're not able to do some of these other things to get the nutrients, which I'm going to talk about. And so, okay. And so again, just going on, that's why the squab as well. Okay, so here are some of the foods that we already have in our diet, and I want to highlight these because we have really great options already, and I want to highlight what you can get. So in salmon and in sardines, and even in butter and milk from grass-fed animals, those are going to be high in omega-3, and that is the fatty acid that plays a critical role in brain development. It's actually been shown, if you have it, to make your kids smarter. It's what's forming the brain, right? So we know that your fish and your fish oils are also going to have vitamins. I put sardines, and I want to pull this out because in the guidance it says not to eat sardines, and it says except the Portuguese one. Now, in looking at fish and how they're processed and looking at sardines, I feel that this is a histamine issue. And it was a packing issue that the fish were allowed to sit too long, and those little bitty sardines would start breaking down and producing something called histamine and putrescine and cadaverine. And so they're basically kind of like toxins. And if they weren't prepared properly, that would have a deleterious effect. Okay? So I don't think it's the sardines. I'm not trying to argue with anyone or anything, but I don't think it's the sardines, because you said you can get the Portuguese sardines. I think it's an issue of correct packaging. So if you have a high quality sardine, it is a great source of vitamin B12. And I say this because vitamin B12 is one of the ones that's absolutely critical for energy as well, that many people who don't get need are lacking. It also, many people in the sardines, you eat those tiny little bones, some of them, and that can be really good for actually getting enough calcium as well. So sardines, they also have iodine, they also have selenium, so they are really high nutrient fish, and they're small, so there's not going to be the bioaccumulation of toxins in them. So especially if you're concerned, if you're looking to get pregnant or whatever, you really want to optimize your nutrition, sardines are a good option. We know milk is great, right? It has B12, but not at high amounts, and it has some other limited B vitamins. Our butter is going to be really important for our fat soluble vitamins, your vitamin A, your vitamin D, okay? And so as are eggs. So eggs, we don't have a lot of guidance about eggs. It says you may eat eggs, just don't go overboard. The egg yolk itself is hugely, like, if you think about it, it forms an entire chip. So it has your fat soluble vitamins, and it has key fatty acids known as choline or phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylserine, that are absolutely critical when you are gestating. For some boys, it says this for pregnancy and infant development. When you are gestating a child, you have to make a cell membrane for every cell in that body. And those cholines, or the phosphatidylcholine, the phosphatidylserine, is what those are made of. So like God gave it to you and said, here's what to make your cell membranes out of, and that's what happens when it turns into a chip. Now, for children and infants, the white of the yolk, for all of us really, is immunogenic. So this whole trend toward like eating your egg white, sandwich or whatever, it's a bad idea. The egg whites can actually irritate some people. Some people may tolerate them, and the egg white can be hard to break down for some people. But the yolks are so nutrient rich that they can constitute like one of the baby's first foods and can be really important in development. And so I wanted to highlight what we do have. These are animal products that have key nutrients that we should be incorporating, especially at key times in our lives. And so this brings me to, I made some custard last night. After doing this presentation, I was like, I'm making some custard. This is such a low cost, easy dessert. I could not believe after Bill Cosby and his pudding commercials, how we all went and bought Jello pudding and mixed it with milk and ate it. when custard is really easy to make. And it is really, I think it's a dessert we have to bring back because it is so nutrient rich and so good for our children. Um, it's nutrient dense. It has the phosphatidylcholine. It has all of those fatty acids from the egg, and the vitamin D, and the vitamin A, and the omega-3s, especially if it's grass-fed or whatever, and cholesterol. So cholesterol has been demonized. Every cell membrane in your body, in your baby's body, needs cholesterol. It's absolutely critical for infant development. You need cholesterol if you're gestating a child. So the eggs are providing all of that, the milk is providing all of that. So we've got milk, egg, a little bit of sugar, and a little bit of cornstarch, and you've got custard. Okay, very nutrient rich. I think we should bring it back as a dessert. An excellent dessert for us. And of course, a bean pie is essentially a custard, but it's diluted with all of the beans and okay. So these are the two deficiencies that concern me the most because iron is necessary to get oxygen to your cells. And zinc is, all of your genes are actually turned on by little enzymes or little proteins that bind to zinc. So they're actually critical for even gene expression. It's critical for your immune system. And as I said, with critical zinc deficiency, one, your immune system goes out the window. You cannot even develop sexually. So these are the two deficiencies that I hone in on where I feel that if there's deficiency here, I feel it's a good idea to really consider eating meat. And the best sources of those for addressing these deficiencies are going to be your beef and lamb. Okay? I'm going to talk about for those of us who aren't deficient or aren't in a critical area of menstruation or gestating a child or post-pregnancy or possibly having several children in a row. These are the people that I'm most worried about. Everybody else, some of the messages that I'm going to say, then you can work it out with yourself. But it's a good idea to have that lab test. Am I anemic? Am I deficient in iron? Right? Zinc is a little bit easier to supplement, but I'll talk about that. I'm not a fan of supplementing either, unless it's good. Right? Okay. So just to go through these zinc deficiencies: delayed puberty, stunted growth, impaired immune function, poor wound healing, reduced testosterone production, impaired reproductive function. Iron deficiency, fatigue, weakness, poor concentration, impaired learning, reduced endurance, and developmental issues in children. So again, many plants actually contain zinc, and pumpkin seeds are a great example. They have really high levels of zinc that are not available to the body because they're bound up with that phytase. Okay, you may get some of them, but not others, and it's going to depend on your other parts of your diet and your own microbiome and other factors. And the other thing is, if you're eating those pumpkin seeds, it may be preventing you from absorbing nutrients and others of the food that you eat at similar times. All right. Okay, so if it's a seed, you should be concerned. All right. So again, zinc and iron are much more bioavailable in meat. So as just a comparison, from an iron source, you're going to absorb 15 to 35% of heme iron, which is exactly the iron that you need. Your body doesn't have to convert it or do anything weird. And from plants, you might absorb 2 to 10%. So if your microbiome is not optimal or the food is not optimal, you may only be absorbing 2% of that iron from plants. And so this is why I give you those weird looks, not because I want it to be a certain way, but because I'm concerned for your health. Are you getting enough? What can you do to make sure that you are? Okay. Plant iron is much more easily blocked by phytic acid, tannins, calcium, and digestive issues. Zinc, you're going to absorb 30 to 40% from animal sources, but only 15 to 25%, or maybe even lower if you have high phytates in your diet. Those are those compounds that are in the seeds. All right. Zinc from animal foods is generally more bioavailable and easier for the body to absorb. Sure, yes. Yep. Okay. And again, you're not, in childbearing years, so it's probably less of a concern. Now, if you come back to the doctor and say, hey, I'm anemic and I tried this, that, and the other, like, what have you tried? So we take it one step at a time, right? All right, now, if you're pregnant, then it's like, we have time to take it one step at a time. All right, can't I just take a supplement? So we think it's a little bit easier to supplement. If you're supplementing, do a chelate, which is like a zinc cholinate or something like that, not more than 35 grams a day, milligrams a day. If you have too much zinc, it can actually compromise your immune function. It can upset your copper balance, your copper zinc balance. So I'm not a huge fan of supplementing with zinc, except for very occasionally if you're ill, or if we're in the middle of COVID. Okay. Now, iron. I am really a fan of supplementing with iron. Iron metabolism is so incredibly complex. And when iron is liberated in your system, it is highly, highly inflammatory. The other thing, so excess iron, if you are supplementing with, can contribute to oxidative stress, digestive irritation, mineral imbalance, and this next one, microbial overgrowth. So microbes such as mold, such as bacteria, love iron. And when you supplement with iron, the first thing that will take that iron is the bad bacteria in your gut. Think about, like, when you fertilize a field and it rains and it runs off into a stream or a river, what happens when all that fertilizer gets into a pond? The algae all overgrown, right? It's the same as what happens when you put excess iron into your system. All of the bad bacteria absorb it and start to overgrow. They use it as a nutrient, and it's not available for you, and it can contribute to problems with your microbiome. So especially for iron, what the biochemistry right now tells me is that the safest way is to be getting this from a meat product. It's more bioavailable, and it's just safer for your body. It's not going to contribute to inflammation. And so, again, when you see me give you that weird look, it's because I want your health to be safe. When I have another answer, I'll give it to you. But for right now, I know that this is the safest way. And again, we are generally talking about people who might be ill, people who already know from the doctor they're deficient, people who have been told they're anemic, and young children, right? Developing children, right? So those are the areas that are kind of my sticking points, all right? And now we're going to move to how do we optimize our current diet that has actually given us a lot of information on how to move forward. Okay, so if you aren't in one of these critical groups, or you're not quite yet, or you're doing okay, or your levels are good, maximizing iron absorption from bean soup. One of the things you want to do is actually pair it with something that has vitamin C. So great options are some fresh peppers, not the ones that were already in the soup. Onions, a little bit of citrus, some fresh herbs, maybe some cilantro, some fermented vegetables, tomatoes have vitamin C, cut up a little tomatoes and put it in your bean soup. So all of those are good. And of course, we know that we are going to be soaking our beans first, and that is going to help liberate some of that zinc in that honey. Okay? So this is something probably all of us should be doing and focusing. Now, if you have a salad with your bean soup, you're probably getting some of those already. I know I have to give credit to AI. It's really helpful for generating images that I think are much easier to remember. So I spent quite a bit of time to get those images. Now, I want to go to, again, and this is the last time I'm going to go into all this, whatever. Again, it's the seeds that are blocking the mineral absorption, the seeds that are not fermented. So traditionally, almost when you hear porridge, it really didn't matter what it was made out of. It could be made out of a number of different grains. But those grains were soaked and fermented, sometimes for days, to take all of these negative properties away and to liberate as many of the vitamins and to make those B vitamins. We don't do that in our society. Some people soak their oats for oatmeal, but most people don't. So it's not just an issue with the beans, it's what else is in your diet. So if you have a lot of commercial bread, it's gonna be high in phytate. If you have oats and granola in your diet that aren't soaked or fermented, those are gonna be high in phytate. All of these are seeds. Now, we don't do nuts and nut butters, I just wanted to put it on there, because that's one reason, right? Even if you have sunflower seeds, those are gonna be high in phytate, right? Brown rice, that's why, there's several reasons why we do the, I even soak my rice for like an hour, but we do the, parboiled rice, excuse me, and then we also parch it and soak it, right? Because it's a seed. Our late legumes, such as our lentils, right? If you go to India, they ferment their lentils and make doses out, right? And I just put soil on there because it's very high in phytate, but of course we don't do that. But the point of this slide is to show you that it's not just maybe what you are thinking of for dinner. Yes, I got my bean soup and I soaked it or whatever, and maybe I made my sourdough bread, but what else are you eating in your diet, right? And what are we giving to our kids that maybe be blocking absorption, okay? Okay, so if you are in one of those groups and you feel like really I need to get some zinc and some iron or whatever, these critical nutrients. So make sure you choose quality. Pasture raised is always going to have more of those omega-3 fatty acids. Obviously, you want it ethically sourced. And then you're going to want to cook it low and slow. That's going to release collagen. That's going to release that zinc. It's going to release salt. And so the connective tissue, all of those things, and the minerals. And so you want to cook it low and slow. I love a good steak, but it's really not what we're supposed to. Okay, we're really supposed to be eating our meat stewed low and slow. And it is the kind of thing where you can even do a stew or that slow cooked meat and portion it out, because you do not need a lot of this. You eat this little bitty size portion a day or 3 days a week, you're probably going to be fine. And that little bit is probably going to save you hundreds of dollars in some expensive supplementation, okay? Now, if you still are low on iron, then there are many other reasons why iron can be messed up. Very, very complex how it's dealt with in the body. So you need to talk to the nutritionist or whatever. Okay. So we were given this poor diet because it is providing almost all of these nutrients in a way that is accessible to our body. And it says, he prescribed for us navy beans and bread and milk. Out of Split Volume 1, page 79. And notice for this one, there's some more nuance. The common food, just milk and bread, or just bean soup and bread, is better than all the fancy food that you may try to eat. Out of Split Volume 2, page 166. Notice that he puts milk and bread together and bean soup and bread together, but he doesn't put milk and bean soup together. If you are low in iron, if you're not, I wouldn't even worry about it. The calcium in milk can actually prevent you from absorbing the iron. Now, if this isn't you, if you're not anemic, it's probably got plenty of iron, it's probably not a problem. But there is a reason why not always the milk with the bean soup if you are in one of those particular categories where you don't feel like you're getting iron. So only if you don't feel like you're getting iron. If you think that iron is fine, don't worry about drinking milk. So still drink milk, just don't drink it right with your bean soup. Okay? All right, so let's look at this. So if we are moving away from meat, is because I've gone into, I scared all of you, I've gone into how these seeds are actually holding the nutrients. Navy bean is a seed. Wheat is a seed. We absolutely have to soak and ferment them to release those vitamins. So if we're moving away from meat and we're not eating sourdough bread, we are really shooting ourselves in the foot, okay? And if we're not eating our soaked navy beans, like some people aren't eating bean soup. I don't know what that's about, but they're not, okay? I mean, I'm just like, I know some people who are eating potatoes and Brussels sprouts, so I'm like, I like potatoes and Brussels sprouts, but it's not bean soup. So the soaking beans and the fermenting bread increases B vitamin availability, and that is one of the most important things. And one of the reasons it does that is it activates these enzymes that reduce this phytic acid that's binding all of these things up. And it also liberates the minerals. And that's why, you know it's liberated because then the plant can grow. First word, can grow. But, and so on how to eat and live, it says put yeast in your bread and let it sour and rise and then bake. So I do want to address this quickly. We know how to soak our beans. Well, with fermenting your bread, typically we do about 1-to-1 whole wheat flour to white flour. That is going to be optimal for your fermentation and making the bread and texture, flavor, rising, all of those things. There's a couple ways to do it. You can use yeast, but if you do it, and I can, this is how I started breaking bread, away from the normal to the overnight fermentation. There's a way to use yeast to ferment it overnight. So you need to have an overnight fermentation, whether it's with yeast or with sourdough. Sourdough has different types of bacteria in it, where yeast is just yeast. They're both really fine. They have slightly different benefits, and I think the sourdough may liberate more vitamins, but that's not as much the point as that you do ferment it and get some of that fermentation. So if you're having trouble with the sourdough, starting with yeast overnight fermentation is a good entry point as well. Okay, and that's how I started with it. So we can follow that. Okay, here's what I want to highlight if something's improperly prepared. It's just a great historical example. In the South, what did we eat? We ate corn. We ate cornbread. And the niacin in it, the vitamin B3, which is absolutely critical for energy, the whole way that we form energy, so many different places that we form energy. And it was bound in that corn seed, and they ground it. There's a process called, I don't even know if I can say it, nixtamalization, where the corn is soaked in an alkaline solution, typically either lime water, calcium hydroxide, or wood ash, that actually partially, fermented the food, but it also liberated the niacin. And traditional cultures have used that for many thousands of years. But in the South, they were not doing that. And they relied heavily on unprocessed corn, and it caused something called pellagra, which is B3 deficiency, which caused skin dermatitis, diarrhea, dementia, high levels of aggression, severe mood disturbances, and cognitive decline. So if you want to have the stereotype of the angry black man, well, if you put him on cornbread that's not nixtamalated, then that's what you have. That may have come from this severe deficiency. Okay, and I wanted to put this to really highlight how something can be in the food, but not available for us. Now, all of the products, even the corn chips on the market, are going to have this process. It's going to be liberated. There are other reasons that corn is still too coarse for us, and it's not the greatest. We really shouldn't be eating it. But I wanted to use this as an example. And when you do that process that they do to corn, it also improves the digestibility and also reduces mold and mycotoxins. So that's the other thing about fermentation, is it does tend to get rid of other things that shouldn't be there in the food. Okay, so likewise in sourdough bread, so it's like you won't hear me say enough, we have to be eating sourdough bread because it liberates the B vitamins, and those bacteria or even the yeast that are in they pre-digest the starches. They lower the phytic acid, so they're releasing all those minerals, right? They are lowering the glycemic response, so it's not going to spike your insulin. It actually lasts longer. The bread itself, it's more moist on the inside. And most importantly for us moving away from meat, it improves that B vitamins now become available. This is really specific to bread. So soaking your beans is good, but the B vitamins are going to be from fermenting the bread. Okay? So if we want the B vitamins, we have to absolutely be eating that sourdough bread. And then it's going to break down that gluten and gliadin. So you hear so many people are going gluten-free. When we used to do sourdough, it breaks down, gluten is actually a protein, and it's a very hard to digest protein. And fermenting our bread is going to break down that gluten. That's one of the primary things it's breaking down, and that is going to make this so much less hard on our digestive system. Okay? So commercial bread rises too quickly. So now they actually put sugar in the bread to make it rise. So it's not actually breaking down the flour at all. It's not breaking down the phytic acid. It's not breaking down any of this. It's not breaking down the gluten. It's just metabolizing the sugar and making the little holes in the bread, little bitty sponges in the bread. Okay? So constantly eating commercial bread is really, really bad for our digestion. So sourdough, and so here's where I believe, and this is my belief, I'm not trying to make any guidance, that our Farina muffins are a compromise. People want their cornbread, so here have a Farina muffin. Because you really haven't liberated that phytic acid, you haven't digested that. If they're whole wheat, that is actually, the whole wheat is hard to digest, and it has all of these anti-nutrients that prevent you from absorbing the nutrients. So if every day you are having Farina muffins with your beans, and your other foods, you're actually preventing your body from absorbing nutrients. Okay? So like if you have Farina muffins once a week, this is not a big deal. I'm not saying never use Farina muffins again, but if it is a staple at every meal, those phytates are still there. You're not just finding what's in the Farina muffin, you're finding with whatever you eat them with all the way through the digestive system. All right, so you need to limit those fast rise breads or eat them, snack, an hour before the meal or whatever, or just limit. And so this is where many of our desserts and pastries have flour, and they're almost never fermented. However, in the case where there is no fermentation, white flour is actually preferred. I know, it sounds terrible, right? But white flour is preferable because it doesn't have those phytates that bind the minerals and the nutrients. Right? It's counterintuitive, all right? But ideally, you should have that 1-to-1 or about 1-to-1 wheat to white bread, and it should be fermented. Do you have a question, Meg?
Yes, when you say white flour, you mean bleached white flour?
Well, it doesn't matter if it's bleached or not. It's just lacking that part of the whole wheat that makes it, whole wheat. Right.
That's the white flour.
Right, just like the regular bag of white flour, you take it out, it's white. Like you can get unbleached white flour as well. That's why I say that. But it's not whole wheat flour. Okay? And like when you make something out of white flour, it's more light and flaky. You put some whole wheat in there, it gets way denser. Okay, so maybe beans, a nutritional powerhouse. I'm again always shocked when I meet someone that came into the nation and there's like 3 or 4 or 5 years and they're still not eating baby beans. Okay. They're a nutritional powerhouse and they're complex carbohydrates, so they're really good for your blood sugar. I noticed with myself, if I, just because of my meal planning or something, I ran out of soup or something, if I don't eat baby beans, it's harder to get through that day to the end of the day. When I eat baby beans, so I hardly even notice that I haven't eaten or whatever. So they really are going to give you that more extended blood sugar. Okay. So these are extremely high in B9, which is folate, right? Not folic acid, which is something that's supplemented. It's folate, and it's extremely important for the neurodevelopment of our children. And it's extremely important for how we make energy, for how we make glutathione. It's just intricately involved in everything. And, I actually probably in Vita, I'm going to do a whole thing on folate because there's different forms. The wrong gene expression is correlated with autism. Like there's a lot going on with this folate. And actually, one of the things that they think is happening in children with autism is that they are actually making antibodies to their folate receptors. They're making antibodies that are blocking their body's ability to absorb folate. So it's a really complex issue. But and one of the reasons I want to say that is you can do everything right, and if there's an autoimmune issue, your baby's body may not be absorbing it. So this is not about going to each other and saying, well, you were eating baby beans at home or chocolate or something like that, right? So there's a lot going on with the folate and some of the autism and other things, but baby beans are very high starch is that starch is good for your microbiome. It has strong prebiotics, so it's going to feed the good bacteria. Now, during my gut health plan, I said, if you already have bad gut bacteria for whatever reason, it can feed the bad bacteria. So if someone can't tolerate meat, we have to work with them to reestablish a healthy gut, not judge them and be like, how can you make meat no matter what? It's relatively high in iron and magnesium. By relatively high, it's still very low relative to meat, okay? But it's high relative to other vegetables. It's high in lysine and leucine, and I call these out because they're actually good for collagen production. And collagen is something that is usually only found in meat, okay? So we are having the building blocks for making good collagen, and we can actually enhance that by adding vitamin C containing foods to our meals with meat, all right? And obviously when we soak them, they have softer texture. So they're among the best beans, as we all know, for slow, sustained nourishment. But they're not naturally easy to digest. They have all of these things, phytic acid, lectins, the enzyme inhibitors. They have less than some of the beans. I just don't even know how anyone ever eats them. Like you can eat them, like kidney bean, and you just I don't know. But so they are less, but it still is there. So of course we soak to activate the enzymes, reduce phytic acid, improve mineral absorption, improve digestion, reduce gas, and shorten our cooking time. When we pair it with our sourdough bread, right, then the lysine from the beans is going to help with collagen formation, especially if we add some vitamin C containing foods to our meal. And we really have a complete protein with critical amino acids. So there's some amino acids that we only really get from food, and it has some of the most important ones. So we get the lysine, arginine, and leucine from the beans, and we get methionine and cysteine. Now, methionine and cysteine are absolutely critical to make your body's master antioxidant glutathione. And that's where we get from the bread, and it's going to be liberated in the sourdough bread much more so than other ones. All right, if you want that big picture, I'm not going to go into it. Okay. Okay, but methionine and cysteine, these are sulfur-containing amino acids, and they're really, really important for so much. Okay, so milk. So as you can see, we're going through the different components of the body. I don't know if you're old enough to remember milk and does the body good. I couldn't get it out of my head, so I put it on there. Milk supports collagen formation as well with lysine and other proteins. It's critical for bone development. It has calcium and phosphorus in it. But in order to absorb that calcium and phosphorus, you need vitamin D. So whether you're getting that from a fish product, whether you're supplementing with it, like olive oil is a great source. Some milk has a little bit in it. Butter is going to be a higher source. The eggs, the yolks of eggs are going to be a higher source, especially if they're grass-fed, pastured eggs are going to be high in vitamin D. And they found that the home pastured eggs had like hundreds of times more vitamin D than the ones from the store. So, and milk is obviously good for growth and repair. It has really those fat-soluble vitamins, and it's really the cholesterol and the fats in milk are really key for nervous system development. They demonize milk and they demonize the fat in it. Those fats are really, really critical. Okay. If you're able to get raw or pasture-raised milk, that raw milk has all the enzymes. Some people don't tolerate milk. If it's raw, it has the enzymes to break down the fats and to break down the protein. Casein is a really big protein in milk that is hard to digest for some people. And the raw milk is going to have the enzymes that help you break it down. It also has beneficial bacteria, so the milk won't go bad. It will actually ferment and sour in a way that actually makes it even probably healthier. It's basically turning it into yogurt. It has vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 is important for clotting. Some of us have heard of vitamin K shot, right? It's important for clotting, but it also tells your calcium where to go. It tells the calcium to go into your bones and not to your arteries. Sort of hardening of the arteries. It's called hardening because they become lined with calcium when your body is inflamed. That vitamin K is really critical, and when we started going to commercial milk, we stopped getting the vitamin K that was in the raw milk or the grass-fed milk. bioavailable calcium or vitamin A, and raw milk has some vitamin C, whereas your store-bought milk, like we're not even taught that milk had vitamin C in it. And that's also going to help with collagen production. Your grass-fed milk is going to be higher in those omega-3 fats that are really going to help with the infant brain development. Again, the vitamin K2, and there's some other key fats called CLA and C15 that are really, really important that we're finding all of these amazing benefits for. So obviously, this is where we want to move as a nation, as a culture. And the whole point of teaching all of this is so that we have a vision to move forward. And that grass-fed milk from the grass is going to have these bioavailable carotenoids that are turned into vitamin A and other really important vitamins. I do want to take a moment here and say that when we say vitamin A, we mean two different things. One, we mean beta-carotene, which is found in plants. It's found in pumpkin and carrots and orange vegetables, right? That is not true vitamin A. Some people's bodies do not convert that to vitamin A properly. Vitamin A is retinol. It turns on your gene expression. So does vitamin D. Vitamin A and D aren't vitamins, they're hormones. Okay? So as hormones, they actually lead the developmental process in our body and the bodies of our children. So if a diet during development is deficient in them, it could change the whole way the body structure of the child develops. All right? They actually literally bind to DNA and activate them. They're hormones. Okay? And vitamin A, true vitamin A, is retinol. It's called retinol because they found it in the retina of eye. That's what's in your retina. And when people were deficient in vitamin A, animals that are deficient in vitamin A and they gestate children like when they've had pig litters where they had no arms because they were deficient in vitamin A. Just didn't even. All right. So when people have had critical vitamin A deficiency, sometimes if you're sick or your body's broken down, you cannot convert beta carotene. You don't convert what you want. It's not going to give you vitamin A. You have a healthy body, healthy microbiome. And we don't know who can make that conversion. It might depend on who you are, where you're from, whatever. But that true vitamin A that we want to get is only an animal product. It could be in milk, olive oil, butter. Okay? And it's called retinol. And again, it's in your retina. And so they used to actually make soup with fish heads. And as they boiled it, it would come out of the retina of the eyeballs, the fish, and into the soup. And that would be a good source of vitamin A. Some people have actually taken animals and eaten their eyeballs, or taken fish and eaten fish eyeballs when they were critically deficient in vitamin A, so much so that their vision started going. Okay, so if you ever need some vitamin A, just go find yourself some eyeballs. Yeah. Okay, along those lines, we have some vitamin A rich butter here, right? They tell you because it's yellow. Right? So we got our vitamin A, our true vitamin A, and retinol. And butter is just a nutritional powerhouse, especially if it's grass-fed. It's not the topic of our diet, but I just want to, say that, especially if developing children and whatnot. It has something called butyrate in it that is made from that fermentation process, right? It's made in our guts, but our guts are so compromised that some of us aren't making butyrate, and that is actually one of the core problems for a lot of our health problems. But butter, it doesn't have as much as we need, but butter actually contains that butyrate because the fermentation in the gut of the cow actually makes it, and they put it into the butter, right? Very anti-inflammatory. It has great effects on the brain. They do a whole lecture on butyrate. Okay. Okay. What may still be lacking? Collagen. So collagen is what holds your whole body together. It what forms your joints. It's what keeps your spinal column flexible. It's what forms the cartilage in your joints and your hips. It is what forms the ligaments. And as you age, if you're not getting enough collagen, and I'm just going to say this in women, because it tends to be more common in women, obviously, you can have a prolapse of your bladder, your uterus, even your rectum, because childbirth stretches those ligaments, and if those ligaments don't get the collagen they need, if they're not rebuilt, like organs start trying to fall out your body. Okay? And then when we're young enough, we're like, what? But having known people that it happened to, like, yeah, it's like, oh. But many people don't realize that having a diet rich in collagen can really help. Now, this is again where the guidance is a little bit gray. I do believe that there are accounts that Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad did have bone broth collagen, and it is said in the guidance, he talks about putting some meat in your bean soup, which would essentially be making some bone broth soup, right? So, how we feel about collagen, but this is something that is a concern that we may not be making enough of. Collagen is rich in glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline, things that you didn't see in some of the other things. Glycine is really important for mental health, can be really calming. A lot of times when I see some people, especially that are vegan, they're not calm. I'm just gonna say that, they're not calm. And some of the nutrients that are in our animal products are very grounding. And so as we move away from meat, we are going to have to, and I'm very interested in following the science of how do we incorporate those grounding things? Is it a change in our gene expression? Is it, we're just not doing it right in terms of we're not making sourdough, whatever it is, right? And so we're gonna have to take one step at a time and evaluate each step. And it's gonna work for some people and not for others because everyone's a little bit different. All right. So plant food, you can't get collagen from plants. I have a friend who wants collagen because they have a degenerating disc, but she's like, can I get a plant collagen? So she'd rather take a synthetically produced plant collagen than just, okay? So collagen formation also requires vitamin C, zinc, copper, and protein. So a lot of times if I take collagen or if you do make some gelatin bars or something for your children, incorporating some vitamin C, which might be some fruit with it, is a great idea. So can be addressed through making bone broth, which is great. And especially for our children, if we're concerned, you can get like organic grass-fed beef collagen, and it's in like a little container. It's dried, and then you make it, you put it in water, and you heat it up, and you boil it, and then or you put it in you can do it in some water, and then mix that water with juice. Maybe even add a little sugar, and basically you can make little gel balls. Okay. So obviously, much of the gel out there, at least used to be made with pork. I'm not even sure it has any real gelatin in it anymore, but you can buy the beef gelatin and make that as a snack for kids. You can put some, whipped cream on it. It can be a really healthy snack. And they do actually have collagen gummies for kids now too. So that is a concern because it's holding our bodies together and it's really determining how we age. So it's something that I'm interested in finding out how we can optimize and maximize our body's own collagen production. I mean, obviously we see animals like cows and horses and they're getting enough collagen. Look at them, they're massive, they're amazing, right? So what is it that's different about something to an intellectual problem for me, right? Okay, so bone broth is rich in collagen, glycine, and minerals. It supports your gut lining and integrity. And when people used to have diarrhea or dysentery, they used to follow that with bone broth to heal the gut. It supports your joints, tendons, and ligaments. It supports collagen formation and connective tissue. Just having bone broth is going to balance our low collagen diet, especially because usually collagen was gotten in by stewing meat. That's where people got their collagen from eating stews and things like that. It's traditionally used in illness and recovery because it's so easy to digest and absorb and so healing. As a fasting support, it helps maintain hydration. Collagen in your body, if you have enough, it helps your body maintain hydration. It hydrates your tissue. Provides minerals and electrolytes. The glycine supports calmness and fast and sustainability. Glycine may support sleep and nervous system regulation, and it may help reduce muscle breakdown during longer fasts if you are having a little bit of collagen. Okay, so finishing up, we're going to go through how to replace what meat provided. So our B vitamins. If we are reducing or not eating a lot of meat, we absolutely have to be doing a sourdough or a fermented bread and making sure we're soaked our legumes and that we're not incorporating seed-based foods like oats or granola that are binding our phytates, that are binding our minerals and our B vitamins. Okay, so if we're moving away from food, we absolutely need to be doing our fermented bread, right? For iron and zinc, again, we want to be, having a little vitamin C, may be adequate. And some people with high need, like pregnant women or something, it may not be adequate, right? And so it's something we're gonna have to monitor and tweak. To make a complete protein, we do our bean soup with our sourdough bread. For our fat soluble vitamins A, D, we add our high quality butter, our quality dairy, our cod liver oil. And again, for amino acid balance, that's kind of a complete protein, we have our navy beans and our sourdough bread. So I did some of this kind of as some pictures. Can go back to so supporting your B vitamin deficiency. So this slide is just on our B vitamins, and again, that's our energy, that's our production of glutathione, that's all of those things. So important, and it mostly comes from fermented things. Even in the meat, it came from that cow fermented in their gut. You can see our sourdough bread is one of the highest in producing B vitamins from that fermentation process. So if we're not getting the sourdough, some of these other things aren't gonna actually make up for it, right? Things like sardines and eggs can provide some of that B12, fish as well. And then, eggs are also good with folate and biotin, as is our sourdough bread. And you can really go back to seeing how important that sourdough bread is again and again. Okay? Some things that we might have even missed over a word in the guidance and not realize how important it is. All right, so especially with iron and zinc, supporting nutritional sufficiency, again, we want to have high vitamin C foods. Green onions are very high in vitamin C. Bell peppers, lemon, and the fermented vegetables can also help. The enzymes can help us digest and make the things in beans and nutrients more bioavailable. In Indian cultures, they make something called dosas, where they take lentils and I think maybe flour and they ferment them together and then they like pour it on a pan and make like kind of like a pancake, but it's fermented and you can see them there and then they put stuff inside them. So they're called dosas, and that's one of the ways lentils are relatively high in zinc for plant food, because they liberate zinc. And so we're not doing that, and that is something we want to look forward to doing. And then, of course, we want to always make sure to incorporate our fat soluble vitamins. And so it may seem redundant, but some people aren't having these in our diet, whether it's eggs or dairy or butter, or cod liver oil, which is going to be really high in A and D. My mom gave us a spoonful of cod liver oil, super gross, every day. I remember patting up in the kitchen, and I never had a cabbage, ever, not once in my life. And my sister hadn't either. So, and then my mom got lazy, well, she got overwhelmed, and didn't give it to our younger brothers and sisters, and they had plenty of cabbage. So, these are things that work and are super important. So thank you, and questions. Yes, ma'am.
But the first thing, because the last presentation, I know you were talking about lentils and how are they very high in glyphosate? Is that what you were saying? It's like right along with the chickpea, so does the fermentation process fix that anywhere, or should we stay away from it? Because I kind of backed out.
They just need to be organic. They need to be organic. Yeah, they can be, and make sure that it's from a reasonable distributor, because some Indian places were like in India were buying Canadian glyphosate treated lentils and then packaging them and selling them as organic. Importing them. So if they're from a vetted American company, they're probably organic. It might break down some of them, but the levels are too high to even consider it. And lentils and chickpeas, if they're not organic, just don't buy them.
I just want to say I'm glad that you're providing all of these alternatives too, because like you said, I know vegetarians just eat fries. You think you're doing something good, but the body is science and mathematics. And because some of us are going to have some limitations to come to adjust, and make sure our bodies are whole. But some of us do have the epigenetics and the expression that a vegetarian diet feels better to them. So we should know the animal byproducts, which I know like mom never said we can't eat the byproducts. It clearly doesn't eat butter, milk, cheese. So sometimes you'll see believers talk about a vegan diet, and that's absolutely against starvation because you have to have the byproducts, and as we continue to present, like the byproducts actually do have that support, like making the bone broth isn't, if you're against eating the flesh, that's not eating the flesh, it's against the byproducts, like,
Well, and one of the reasons we don't eat the flesh is because it's very porous and hard on our digestive system. And so the bone broth is just a totally different thing. Now, I mean, I think we are going to get all the way away from doing land animals, eating land animals, but we have to, we're going to have to do this gradually and, individually and collectively and kind of experiment and test, okay, is this working? Who is it working for? Who are our weak links? Who is it not working for? And what's next? Maybe additional guidance will come. But we have guidance that we're not implementing already. And so in terms of us being the standard bearers, we need to be implementing that guidance because we can't be like saying, hey, this is from God, and then like I'm exhausted and, whatever else it is, right? I think these young ladies are depending on you to ask the question. I think the young ladies are depending on you to ask the question. There was probably information over, I'm sure. Yes, sir. That's an excellent question. That's why I'm doing this. It is in the guidance that we can have farina muffins. I believe it was a concession because at that time, Black people were so used to cornbread that he was like, okay, like we're not going to do cornbread. It's just forbidden. You can do the farina muffins, but it was never meant to be a staple. Like, we allow you to have dessert, even though Elijah Muhammad says stay away from sweet. Even the bean pie is a concession. There's a lot of sugar in a bean pie, right? The beans are good, but that's an awful lot of sugar. So part of it is, and it's also, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, it's best to eat the beans in the jacket, which means they're not like smushed up, right, or tenderized. But he said, my own cook won't do it that way. So it's a step-by-step process, and the intent is to marry that Islam is science, to get back to the science, and, with the guidance, and always be open to the leading of God. I can't lie to you and say, oh, well, it's fine with iron and zinc, if that's not what the best science tells me. But when we have better guidance, and it may be, when our microbiome is re-optimized, that that's not a problem, or our gene expression. Maybe we start making enzymes that help us to absorb it better. It's hard to say exactly where we're going, but in where we're going, the better we get at incorporating the best elements of the guidance. Right?
Yes, so I saw you said, having some of the vegetables that have vitamin C with the beans, seems like fresh, fresh. Uh, but in thinking of the Honorable Elijah, I'm saying that the plain beans with just salt and pepper
I didn't
is
mean
better for us,
in the beans, I just meant at the same meal.
right? So would you say then that the plain beans from your biochemistry understanding is still better than the beans with?
So here's what I learned in doing some of my research. I'm a big fan of plant polyphenols. They're amazing, but they actually prevent the absorption. They bind to iron. So when we put a lot of curcumin and other herbs in our soup, which again, makes it great, right? Those are healthy things, but they can bind to that iron specifically and sometimes those other minerals and chelate it so that it goes through our gut instead of being absorbed. So we are going to absorb that iron better without heavily seasoning our beans specifically with herbs and things like curcumin. So, I'm not saying that the amount that we're using is wrong, but some of us just keep upping the amount that we have. So yes, there is biochemical guidance behind the don't overly season the food. And I don't think that's referring to adding like some strawberries on top. Yes, sir. Sure. So you have a chromosome and it's wrapped up and it's not expressing until certain gene needs to be expressed. And there are certain signals that kind of tap the that DNA, and the DNA actually opens up. Okay, and then there's little enzymes in the nanobots that actually copy that into mRNA, and then it goes to another part of the cell that's made into a protein, something that's going to do something or build your body. The actual enzymes that bind to it are literally called zinc fingers. They bind to it and actually turn on the gene. And so zinc is absolutely critical for actually turning on and off your genes in a general sense. So there's different kinds of zinc fingers. But the point being is if you're zinc deficient, your body uses zinc for many different things. It's going to be stealing from Mary to pay Paul and stealing from Paul to pay Mary. And so you may actually not be able to turn on the gene expression that you need at critical right times and everywhere for those specific, because there are different ones that use zinc. Yes, sir.
I thought, I mean, some particular like, cow or steak is that because, the steak can rub against, the flesh on your skin while you're digesting it, and it's hard to, so, I would bring it,
Great, that's an excellent question. So this is a more general thing about eating fried food, okay? And I'm up here giving like you the biochemical guidance, but as a person, I'm just following the rest of you. Like you give me a steak and I want to eat the steak, okay? Even though I know it's bad for me, right? If you put that steak on the grill on the outside, I mean there are worse things that you can eat, but it's gonna char that outside, right? Or if you overcook your meat, like if you cook it under the broil, right? And it's the same if you deep fry your vegetables, all right? If ever, like some people put like their broccoli in the oven and they do roasted vegetables at a high heat because they like the taste. Anytime you have a protein in there, it is actually going to take that protein, and the same thing happens in a microwave. Think about cooking an egg in the microwave. It makes the proteins kind of bunch up into a form that's called denatured. It's a bunched up form that your body can't recognize. So whenever we heat proteins, okay, so plants have less protein, so it's less the problem with plants, but if they're high in proteins like lentils or peas, and we deep fry those lentils or we deep fry those pea proteins or that hummus, the chickpeas, anytime we heat them at a high temperature, it makes it really hard for our body to digest, and it is hard on our intestines. Okay? But when you take the meat and you take it from raw, you haven't cooked it yet, and you cook it really slow, they don't bunch up like that. They actually start breaking down slow into all the different parts that our body can absorb. So cooking meat and even some protein dense vegetables like lentils or something or beans longer actually helps the protein to, instead of bunching up and being unable to be digested, helps it to sort of open up, sort of break down to a way that our body can absorb. Probably more than we wanted. And so we're not supposed to fry our food. So anything that's high in protein, like a potato isn't high in protein. So frying it isn't going to be as problematic as frying something like peas or hummus or like a waffle. Okay, and this is a big one because a lot of us fry stuff. Usually tea is lower than coffee, and it's really just gonna depend, you could go half and half, half caffeinated, half coffee. You know, we just wanna get a high quality coffee when you're doing that, because some coffees have holes in them. So, looking for some high quality. It's, you know, sometimes you can even, check GPT like for breakup, you know, like some places they put the amount of caffeine in things and others they don't. You can pretty much guarantee if you go to Starbucks or someplace, that's gonna be really hot. So you could do a half, half. I do tea. Green tea is a little bit less caffeine than black. So sometimes I'll do green tea. All right, I love the questions. It's so great to know that you guys are engaged with me. I really appreciate it. I do because this is a labor of love that's on my heart, and I just thank you guys for taking the time.
Well, let's give it up to Sister Christina. That's a wonderful presentation. Wonderful answers. Praise be. I don't know about y'all, but all that talk about food made me a little hungry. So we are going to wrap up today. But as our sister was sharing all of this with us, she said we are saying that we have guidance from God how to eat to live. So we must try to follow our guidance as best as possible and be the examples of what we say we uphold. So as she gave us great insight into what God has revealed to the most honorable Elijah Muhammad on how to live, let's try to practice what we have been given from Almighty God. We thank everybody for making it today, and we hope to see everyone tomorrow. We can talk over the spiritual food that upholds the physical. So with all of that covered and all of the questions answered, thank you again, Sister Christina, for your great scholarship and the studies that you have undergone to bring this to us, that we can know from the science that what God has revealed is the truth. We already should know what is the truth. That adds conviction to the conviction. That should help us to believe even more deeply that God has indeed come. Because he gave us all of this. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us all of this without the breakdown. But now scientists and others, besides our great sister, are looking into what God revealed and showing that it's indeed the truth. So we don't have to doubt at all. And really, we can go beyond belief into knowledge that God has come and given us the best of diets, spiritually, mentally, and physically. So with all of that said, we can go ahead and close today with prayer. Everyone, please stand for prayer. In the name of Allah, the Saint, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the world, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Master of the day of judgment, in which we now live. Thee alone do we serve, and thine aid do we seek. O Allah, guide us on the right path, the path of those on whom thou hast bestowed favor, and not the path of those on whom your wrath is brought down, and of those who go astray after they have heard thine teaching. Amen. Thank you, everyone. May Allah bless you.